Hey everyone, welcome to the Tuesday night conference call, sponsored by DE and brought to you by the band of brothers of DE. Tonight we got a special guest. You heard from his wife a few weeks ago, and tonight we get to hear from Pete Gay. A little bit about Pete. He has been in practice for 27 years. He's been coming to DE for over 30 years. And I know personally when I was on the board of the ICA, this guy was rock solid. He has been the state rep for Maine for longer than I can remember. And he is a principled man. And I don't care who it is, where it is. If something came across that he didn't feel was principled, he stood up and told his opinion. And I so appreciate it because I just know how hard it is to be there. And now, just recently, he was elected to the vice chair of the assembly. I think someday you'll see Pete Gay be the president of the ICA, and that when that happens, it'll be navigating the right direction. So before we get to Pete, there are a couple things we need to bring up. The room block for this DE. DE is coming up. I hope everybody knows it's April 21st through the 24th. The room block is completely sold out at this point in time. Kat told me there is some inventory available, but you have to go through Kat to get that inventory. So you need to call. There's a ticker going down, scrolling below me. It's going to be scrolling the whole time. Make sure you get with Kat. Make sure you get your room at the hotel there. Also, the second thing is there's another ticker that's going to be going on about signing up for the text thread. That text thread will be going on not only now before DE, but during DE. If there's some kind of emergency or something, we need to get information out. If you sign up, all you got to do is sign up. And again, as the ticker says, and then you'll be getting text messages if something's changed. Example she brought up, if it's raining and the pool party has moved to the boathouse, etc., or there's whatever there is, any kind of changes, you'll be brought in via text. So there's me scrolling that throughout the presentation. Make sure you take note of that. If you haven't been to DE in a long time, you haven't ever been to DE, by God, sign up. You got 5 weeks. Get there. This is going to be epic. And if you've never been to DE, if you've never been to Sarasota in April, you got to get there because it's freaking awesome. And it's been a while since I've been able to get to DE, and I'm so excited. But I'm really excited about our speaker tonight. So for no further ado, let's hear from Dr. Pete Gay.
Hey, Andy, thanks for that intro. But I think it's you scheduled to be the next president of the ICA. I think you do a great job well before me. But thanks for having me. And so, yeah, you heard from my wife a couple of weeks ago, and she is really a great off-the-cuff speaker, last minute. She'll talk about whatever. I'm typically not. I'm usually more of a preparer, but this go around, I really didn't do much preparing. But that's okay. I kind of started to think about my path in chiropractic, and what I started to realize is that the path of how we get somewhere is probably as important, if not more important, than where we are and where we land. And of course, that path is still ongoing. But if I look back, and maybe in the early days, I would have judged, gee, I wish I would have done it another way. But in hindsight, it's the way it had to happen, and it's the right way. So, yeah, as Andy mentioned, back a long time ago, went to my first D. The way that started is I tell people I started off my chiropractic education at Rutgers College of Pharmacy. So I was going to become a pharmacist. Some of you may have heard this story, maybe not, and I'll keep it brief. But I was in pharmacy school, and this was the top pharmacy school in the country to train pharmacists to work in the drug industry. Can you imagine that? And I didn't know anything about chiropractic. And the only reason I got there is because I worked in a pharmacy and I got accepted. And so I ended up there, and I started to realize, in not too much time, that this really wasn't for me. I really wasn't loving what I was doing, what I was learning. It just didn't feel right. That was the first sign of me listening to my innate, saying, this is not quite right. I'm sure there are people that to do it, but that's not me. So along the way, most of my life I had been pretty sick. I was one of those sick kids that got sick from everything. Um, got colds, sore throats, fevers. But one of the big things I had is a lot of really bad allergies. I was allergic to everything. I had trouble, especially at certain key times of the year. I couldn't breathe. My eyes would swell up. Everything would swell up. Um, so fast forward over to pharmacy school, I get there and they start telling me, "Hey, you could try this drug, try that drug." Guess what? We got it for free. There was a medical school right next door, so they were worked in cahoots with them, and they had us try all these kinds of things. But I was also learning about what they did to the body, and it didn't really sit well with me. Um, so one summer, I was working at a small pharmaceutical company in New Jersey called Zambon Corporation, and I was just a bit of a paper pusher filer there. But what happened was the CEO secretary kept telling me, "Hey, you should talk to my sister. She's a chiropractor. Talk to my sister. She's a chiropractor. She can help." And I'm thinking, I didn't know what a chiropractor did. I'm thinking, isn't that somebody who takes care of athletes with sports injuries? I really don't even know what it is. So I met her one day, started talking, and she told me about chiropractic. I thought it was cool. I went to see her. Fast forwarding, I started getting adjusted. I liked it. It felt good. My body felt good. Not that I got the big idea at that point, but I just liked it innately. So I continued. And within about 3 months, all of my allergy problems were gone. My health did a total 180, and I said, "This is some cool stuff. This is the path I want to go." Decided to be a chiropractor. Interestingly enough, this chiropractor, who I haven't seen in ages, uh, told me at one point when I left, she goes, "You got to go to this thing called DE." And I remembered that. That stuck in there. I had no idea what it was, but I said, "All right." It was just back there in the file. Moved on. Went to school at New York Chiropractic College. I start having classes, they start teaching stuff, and I'm like, this is interesting. Isn't that really, again, I didn't get the whole big picture or understand chiropractic fully, but it wasn't really what I thought it was. But I figured I'm there. I'm going to follow through with it, except for one class. I had a great chiropractic philosophy. For anybody who knows Dr. Frank DiGiacomo, who's passed away many years ago, he was a fantastic, very principled man. And he was the only class I went to that I got kind of a little spark, a little light from. Um, so that first try ended, and we used to get those Today's Chiropractic magazines from Life College at the time at the school. And I found this little ad right in there that says, "Come to DE." And there were a couple buddies in my class, and it was right during the break between first try and second try. And I said, "Let's go to that thing." And they're like, "Yeah, cool. Let's go to something." "What is it?" I said, "I don't know. Somebody told me to go to it, but the timing works. We'll take a road trip. We'll go in my car. We'll crash in a hotel room. Let's go." And we went. We went down there. We walked into this room at the Waverly with got to be 2,000 people in there. And the energy was amazing. And, I started to think about thinking back at D, like, what was it that was so amazing? What sparked that light in me? Because that's the place, that very first DE is where I feel like I got lit up, and like I think I got it just where I didn't really get it before. That was it right there. And you know, it was really grand. There were a lot of chiropractors, talking about seeing a lot of people and making a lot of money, which is fantastic. Nobody, no, everybody likes that. But what really got me was the energy. That something was the energy or the stories that they were sharing, the miracles that they were talking about. And that's what really just lit me up. And in chiropractic and D, and we went back and we were never the same. We were not very popular in our class beyond that because we were always the controversial people. I don't think that's ever really changed. But if you look at it, and something I've always noticed, and a lot of you I'm sure have noticed, is that all great principal chiropractors have some sort of root back in DE. They might have gone to DE B&D chiropractors. Maybe they didn't go anymore, and that's no judgment on them, but they all have their roots at DE. Um, and, you know, back in school when I was there, it wasn't always easy. There was always this, um, I kind of thought, hey, maybe I should have gone to another school. Maybe I should have gone to Life University. I wish I would have gone to Life University. But I realized after that it was right in the right place at the right time, because that's where I needed to be. It was part of my path. In hindsight, I believe it helped me speak up for chiropractic because I had to do it right in my own class, right in my own school. When something that we wanted to learn that wasn't being taught or wasn't being really told the right way, we had to speak up. And, that's not easy, but hey, you know what? If you go to a place or school where you're more in that bubble where everybody's thinking the same way, it might be a little easier, but then you got to get out in the world and kind of um, teach all the other people. So I think that gave me that jump start to help me along with it. So I'm always grateful to D because that's where my roots are, just like all of you, and just like all great chiropractors, like all of you. Um, but like I said, some of the things, I think one of the things that really got me was not even that these people saw a lot of people and they were driving fancy cars. And again, that's all great. It was the energy and the stories. The stories were stories of miracles happening that like you couldn't believe, but you did believe. Um, so I think those stories are really important today. I mean, stories, at least for me, stories are how we can educate our patients. Stories are often how I educate patients by sharing them. Sometimes the patients share it with other patients. That's even more powerful than when I tell them. But sharing stories of people's wins and people's miracles in chiropractic um, are really what make the spark happen for our people. And we need that for our people. We need it for the people that aren't our people yet. They don't know they are, but they're going to be our people. Out there in the world, there's a lot of angst out there. There's a lot of chaos out there, and people need to know about chiropractic and innate and our philosophy and what it is that we do. Um, Chiropractors need to know it. I mean, chiropractors need to know it more than anybody, I think. Even us, we need to continuously hear these stories. This is why we have these calls. This is why we go to DE so that we um, keep up and keep fired up about chiropractic. So, uh, always good idea to share a few stories. So, I picked a couple. I'm just thinking about a couple of my favorites, and I and I mentioned this to Katie just before, and she said, "Hey, remember whatever happened to Waylon? Because this kid moved away, but there was this little boy that we took care of, and years ago, he came in. This little boy, Waylon, cute little kid, 5 years old. Um, his eyes were crossed like this, and his mom said, "Well, you know what? A month ago, they weren't crossed like that. They were fine." And they were referred by another family that we take care of. But mom said, he kept saying, "Hey, mom, why do I see two things, two of everything?" And she said, "I thought he was just being silly." And then he goes, "Yeah, I see two of that and two of that." And she thought he was goofing around. But then she started to notice pretty quickly over time that his eyes were kind of shifting a little bit and they started to cross. And within a matter of a few weeks, they crossed significantly. So, of course, she's a mom. She's scared and trying to figure out what's going on. And she goes to see the doctors, and the doctors can't figure it out, but they suspect maybe something in his brain. So they send him for an MRI. And the MRI shows nothing unusual. Everything's good. They did a number of tests and a number of neurologists. They can't find anything wrong with him. So around these parts of New England, when nobody can figure anything out, they send you to Boston because Boston is where all the best doctors are. So they sent him down to Boston. They sent him to see the specialist. They did another specialized type of MRI. And in this MRI, they did find that he had a very, very small cyst, not cancerous. They don't believe a benign cyst somewhere in the center near the corpus callosum in his brain. And they said, that could be something. And now neurologically, when you look at it, it has nothing to do with how the eye movement happens, but they said, who knows, maybe. Um, so they said what we could do is start dosing them with gamma radiation to see if we could shrink it down and see if it does anything. As a what if, and the mom says, I'm not dosing my kid with gamma radiation. On a what if, you don't even know if that's even really it. So uh, mom spoke to somebody else who patients of ours and referred him in. And so this little boy comes in and she asked me about it. And I said, I don't know about what's going on in there, but I know if he's subluxated, then we can help. So we checked him, we scanned him, and we decided we should take some x-rays, upper cervical x-rays of his neck to see exactly what's going on in there. So he stood in front of the x-ray machine and mom kind of wanted to hold him steady. So we had her help just kind of put her fingers on the side of his head to kind of just hold it in place just so he doesn't move around. We took the films and we look at the films and it looked like he was going almost 90 degrees sideways, 45 sideways, just on an angle like that. And mom could see from the picture, it goes, oh, it looks like it's, I was pointing out the structures, it looks like it's twisted. I said, you were holding him. He was looking straight ahead. His upper neck was so twisted. She didn't know how. I don't know how. We still don't know how. And I said, look, I don't know if uh, correcting that, if it's going to clear the eyes, it can clear the brain, but that shouldn't be there. He shouldn't have that subluxation. And I know if we remove that subluxation in the upper part of the neck that's squeezing on his brainstem, he's going to do better. There's no way he can't do better. So something that we got to correct. And she said, let's do it. So we started checking him. We started adjusting him, checking him, adjusting him. And, visit to visit, we didn't talk about what was going on with him because we were just letting him be a kid. He's got a lot of stuff going on. We check him. I start noticing within weeks his eyes don't look so bad. I mean, they're still off, but they don't look so bad. So they start getting a little better. They start getting a little better. One week, I finally asked her mom. She said, "How do you think he's doing?" I said, "Well, he's clearing out. He's holding adjustments better. So how do you think he's doing?" She goes, "I think his eyes are better, but I'm afraid I don't want to jinx it." Uh, but she had a follow up back in Boston to go see this doctor. And finally, she said, I'm going to go back to Boston to see this doctor and for a reevaluation. But his eyes by that time were looking pretty darn good. She goes back to see this doctor, and they have some special measurements tools that can pinpoint the exact precise location of that eye position. And this specialist said, mom came back and told me, I said, what did the doctor say? She says, his eyes are a lot better. And I said, did you tell her what you've been doing? And she goes, this woman is from the South. She's from Kentucky. And she's like, are you kidding me? Of course I told her what I'm going to do, what I've been doing. So she told the specialist that what she's been doing, take her to the chiropractor. And I said, what'd she say? She said, you know what? She said, I can't tell you that's the first time I've heard that. So apparently this person knew something. Even if she didn't understand, she knew something. She knew that other people have had results under chiropractic care, but at least to her credit, she said, continue doing what you're doing. Let's just keep going that path because whether it is or it's not, it's better. So you continue doing that. They went back for another MRI and found that little cyst was still there. So nuking them wasn't going to fix anything. Eventually, down the road, at some point, they kept checking in the future, and they did find that it started to go away. So it's probably just a fluid cyst, and it was just uh, coincidental that was there. So good thing that mom made a decision and listened to her innate not to blast the kid with radiation. The family did move away. Last I heard, he was doing well, and I pray they're still under chiropractic care. I haven't heard from them in a while, but these stories still, I never take them for granted. They light me up. They light other people up, especially when they get to share them with others. Um, Speaking of which, it made me think of, so one of our former CAs uh, last year had her first baby. Ended up having at the hospital in Portland. And this is still when we had COVID restrictions. You can't go into a hospital. Nobody's going into a hospital. No visitors. Of course, we're considered visitors. Um, so the baby was born, and the birth was a little rough, I would think. They didn't think so, but when she was born, she was she wouldn't feed, and then all of a sudden when she started to feed, she started to vomit. And every time she fed, she vomited. Then she fed and she vomited, and it was green and brown. And dad was like, all right, that's I know that's not, there's no way it's supposed to be that. So they talked to the doctors and they said perhaps they might think she might have some sort of constriction in her digestive tract where stuff isn't going down, it's coming back up. So they said, we may have to, let's do a CAT scan, and we might have to do some corrective surgery if something's bound up in there. So mom right away asked, and dad asked, can you come up and check the baby? Fortunately, they did talk to the doctors and nurses, and they said, they just told them straight out, we want our chiropractor to come up and check the baby. And they said, yes. I was really gratefully surprised, but they said, yeah, let them come in. So I got in, and you had to go through the certain barriers and masks and everything, which is fine, whatever we got to do to get the job done. And I go in and check this little baby, and basically you could see her head tilt, and you could feel she's not moving. And I just gently put my fingers on her atlas, felt it moved to one side, it wouldn't move. And I just moved my finger right in, and you could you didn't feel a click release, but she just finally just eased up and turned her head to the right where she wasn't turning her head to the right, with no force, just that intention and that finger contact. And at that moment, I instantly got the feeling. I never hear voices, I just get feelings. And sometimes those feelings can say a whole paragraph, but it's just an instant feeling. As soon as she said that feeling, I just said to mom, go feed your baby. Your baby's fine. Um, and the deal with the hospital is they won't let the baby go until the baby was feeding 24 hours continuously with no issues, on her own without assistance. And I said, go feed your baby. And I had to, they needed me to go. And she says, I'm going to try to nurse her now. And I said, call me, let me know what's going on. And I remember walking out of that hospital, looking at my watch, looking at the time to pay attention to when 24 hours was going to be, simply because I knew, not because of me, but because of innate and because of God, that baby in 24 hours was going to be out of there, because that baby's going to nurse right now. So I waited 24 hours. I give him a little time. 24 hours, I got no text. But about 26 hours, I got a text saying we left about 2 hours ago. And so that was a fantastic miracle. And that all comes back to the teachings that it's not about me. It's about, really, Dr. Sid taught us in the very beginning, you're better. You just know that you know that you know that you know that they're better. And in that moment, I knew that baby was better. My job was done. Now it was just Nate's job. It was the baby's job. It was mom's job. So they came home. Baby beyond that was fine. Never needed anything else. To this day, we check them regularly. And what's great is mom still comes into the reception room and she tells everybody that story. And she's been there with a crowd of people, and they're asking her about the baby, and she just starts the whole story about how her baby got adjusted right in the ICU and how everything happened. And boy, she gives a way better chiropractic talk than me on that. I could just have her have people tell people that story all the time, and people just uh, gravitate to the energy of those stories. And they could be simple. Just a more recent um, story is that there's this young woman. So during the pandemic, we've had this thing called pandemic migration. A lot of you may have had it, where people leaving the big cities and they're coming to the more rural areas. And so Maine has been one of the largest areas believe it or not, of pandemic migration, as they call it. So we would always get people that moved here from somewhere else, that moved here from Massachusetts, so they might have moved here from Connecticut. That's not uncommon. But during the last couple of years, we got people. We moved here from L.A., Las Vegas, uh, everywhere. And this young woman moved here from Baltimore, and she's only 25. She's a nurse, and she called up and she said, I got a lot of neck pain, and I was going to see a chiropractor in Baltimore, and I'd like to come in and be seen. So she comes in, and we talk to her, and come to find out that that chiropractor in Baltimore, she kind of referred to me. She goes, he was a chiropractor, but he did more PT. He did a lot of PT, and she was okay with that. And I asked her if she got adjusted. She goes, he did a little of that once in a while, but he did more PT. I said, "Did you ever have an X-ray?" No. And so we explained it. It's like, okay, this is going to be a little different than what you've had. And we explained it as, preliminarily, and what we're going to do, and how we're going to check you, and how we're going to scan you, and how we're going to X-ray you. And then you're going to come back, and we're going to tell you what's going on, and if we could help, how we could help, what to expect, that kind of thing. And she came in, she never heard any of this stuff. But what she found out, digging deeper, is not only she had neck pain, she had 25 years old. Most of her life, she's had headache, severe headache, every single day of her life without fail, every single day. On top of that, and this young woman works as a nurse, and she works a lot of long hours, headache every day. I don't know how you could do that. And she also she at first just mentioned she had a lot of digestive issues. In reality, probably the biggest part of her digestive issues is most of her life, she'd only have a bowel movement once a week at best. Once a week was best she could do. Laxatives, nothing worked. Seen doctors. They just said, that's the way it is. Take some laxatives. Even still, she could only go once a week. So she comes in. She sees her x-rays. Her C2's out in right field. And her lumbar spine is torqued. So we start checking her. We start adjusting her up here, down here, check her, adjust her up here, down here, as needed. And right away, within the first week, she comes in, she goes, I haven't had a single x-ray, a single headache since that first adjustment. And she's been coming in for about a month and a half now, maybe a little longer. She still has not, she goes, I haven't had, even with my long hard hours, I haven't had one headache since that first adjustment. Nobody ever checked her, really. She said the chiropractor never really adjusted her neck. When I said, did he adjust you? She said, yeah, a little bit. Come to find out, he wasn't really adjusting her. He was doing some sort of muscle manipulation of some sort. So that started to get better. And then she says, I got to tell you something. She said to me just a couple of weeks ago. She says, I'm going to the bathroom every day like a normal person, first time ever. I'm not taking any laxatives. I can't believe how my body feels. And so those things are huge for someone like that. And they're exciting. And you know what? After all these years, 27 years, they're still exciting to me. My wife was in the office. I said, after all these years, all that stuff is really exciting to me too. Go share it with her. And she did. And she went out and told her, and she was really excited. And she's been telling other people. And so we have to get people sparked up. We have to keep our spark up, and keep telling the stories, because, we all want to educate and teach. And I think that's great. And everybody has their different styles. I find for me is telling the stories and sharing the stories are what keep me excited, what keep people excited, what keeps them motivated, keeps them understanding about what chiropractic is. And, probably always stick to them. So I love hearing all your stories. I love going to DE and hearing the stories. So keep sharing them. Keep turning the crank and testify. And I appreciate all of you always sharing your stories and your wins. And I always will. So that's all I got for tonight. Peace out and thank you.
Hey, brother, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You kept saying the word spark.
Spark.
And yes, we need to spark interest and spark whatever it is to our patients. But you also said we need to spark other chiropractors. Realistically, we can only see so many people in our practices, right? But
Right.
if we can go and grab the people who are just manipulating something in their neck in Baltimore and say, hey, come to DE, and spark their asses, then the world's going to change, right? I mean, that's what ultimately what we're trying to do. Yes, within our practice, we have to teach the principle. We have to, and again, the best thing is to have our patients tell the story to other patients. That's by far the better way to do it, right? But I'm going to urge you and everybody on this call or on this line tonight to go out and reach out to somebody in your community and drag their ass to DE, because there's so many people in their practices that feel like they're on an island and maybe they don't even know this stuff. Andy Harding, was in practice 20 years before he heard about this stuff, didn't even know what this stuff was, So I urge y'all, again, DE's coming in 5 weeks, got plenty of time to get the arrangements. If you can't stay in the hotel at DE, there's all kinds of hotels around there. Let's fill that up with people who need to be sparked, because I love that word, and believe me, the world needs it. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for your message tonight. Love you, man.
Love you. Thanks, Andy.
All right. So that's it for tonight, everybody. Got 5 weeks. Make sure you do whatever that ticker says, and we'll see y'all in about 5.5 weeks. Love and appreciate y'all.
Love you.